Started. Other people will probably join us, but we'll start with some introductions. So this is the nonprofit Montgomery webinar on the Early Care and Education Initiative Recovery Fund. I'm Franca Brilliant, working with nonprofit Montgomery, and I'm here with two of my colleagues, Meredith Bauer and Mindy Chong, who will be helping behind the scenes. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. And if you have if you're having technical issues, you can put something in the chat box. The webinar will be recorded, and the slides that we're putting up will also be shared on the website. So you can access all of these resources. Just a word about the setup. So Nonprofit Montgomery is an organization representing the interests of nonprofits in Montgomery County. We provide technical assistance and advocacy and other services. And we've been working very closely with the county during this COVID-19 period. The County Council asked us to help childcare providers, that's all of you, access the funding for childcare programs that they appropriated last week. The council has been thinking about how to support childcare providers for some time because we know that you were really hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that also you are essential to the county reopening. And so last week they appropriated $10 million to support your programs, and this webinar is meant to help you access that funding. So I think we have a pretty good crowd on the webinar, so I'm going to share my slides so we can get into the heart of the presentation. Okay. So as I mentioned, we're working with the county closely on the COVID-19 response. They've asked us to be technical assistance providers to all of you, childcare providers, on accessing this, this particular fund. We are also working with the Women's Business Center, which is providing technical assistance as well. The Women's Business Center is focusing on family childcare programs. We are focusing on childcare centers, but we are happy to answer questions and to have any childcare program on the webinars. So as I mentioned briefly, this is coming out of the Montgomery County Council's initiative to assist childcare programs to reopen. The funds through this grant program, and it is a grant program, not a loan, so you won't have to repay it, but the grants can be used basically for two kinds of buckets of funds. One is operating costs associated with reopening. And so that is costs that if you are open now, you can look at the costs that you have currently. If you are open, if you are planning to open after this moment, you can look at costs that are associated with that. You must be open by August 31st to be eligible for this funding. And then the second bucket of money is to reimburse losses that you may have had due to the impact of COVID-19 on your operations. The organizations that can receive funding through this program include child care centers, letter of compliance programs, and family child care and large family child care. And also both profit and nonprofit organizations can apply. There are some really important criteria around eligibility, so I'm going to walk through them one by one, and we'll be able to answer more detailed questions later. But one is that you must have a licensed child care center, a registered family child care program or large family child care home, or a letter of compliance program that is located in the county and is fully licensed or registered as appropriate. The second thing is the county was very focused on very young children, so you must provide child care to children from birth to age 5. Now, if you provide child care, for example, to children 18 months to 5 years old, you can apply. If you provide child care to children from birth to age 5, and you also provide care to school-age children, say after care or before care, you can also apply. The essential is that you are providing care to children in that birth to age 5 bracket. You have to be in good standing with the state of Maryland. So this is for businesses and nonprofits. It does not apply to sole proprietors, and it goes through the Department of Taxation and Assessment. We'll come back to this a little bit later and provide you with a link, but basically it means that you've registered and you are not delinquent on any of your taxes or fees. You must be able to reopen by August 31st, 2020. The only programs that will be exempted from this deadline are programs in MCPS school buildings. So I'm sorry to say we have had some questions from programs that are in, for example, private schools or other kinds of facilities that won't be open, and they are not eligible. However, if you can open gradually, even with only a few children by August 31st, you could be eligible. And also important, 60% of the children that are served at your site or sites must be Montgomery County residents. So the county also had some priorities in establishing this grant fund. These are things that they would particularly, these are organizations and populations that they would particularly like to support with this funding. So that is programs serving children receiving federal, state, or local subsidies, programs serving children with special needs, and programs located in these targeted zip codes. So the zip codes were chosen because they're areas where there is a shortage of childcare and or there are high rates of COVID-19 infection, and programs that are participating in Maryland Excels. So again, these are priorities. If you do not meet these criteria, you can still apply, but the organizations that do meet these criteria will get preference in the review process. Okay, really important piece of information is the amount of the awards. As I mentioned, the council appropriated $10 million. $6.5 million of that will be assigned to centers and letter of compliance programs because they're bigger. And $3.5 million of that will be assigned to family and large family childcare programs. For the centers and letter of compliance programs, the council decided to set limits for each site. So it's up to $75,000 for one site, going up to $250,000 if you have 4 or more sites. And it's $25,000 for a family child care program. Couple of other clarifications about that. In terms of the centers and letter of compliance programs, if you have one central unit that runs all of your programs, you will apply for each of those sites, but you will be applying collectively. So that means that you could apply for the multiple site funding. If you are a program which if you're part of a franchise program, you each have different names, you operate completely independently, but you may use the same model or be connected to some kind of national program, then you would apply independently. The amounts here are caps, which means they're the most you can ask for, but they aren't guarantees. So if you have, say, a family child care, you could get up to $25,000, but that does not mean you will get $25,000. It really depends on some calculations that we'll talk about a bit further on. Okay, so this is another important set of considerations. The county is going to open this application on June 29th, so that's on Monday, and they will put up a website with information and will also provide a template for the application and a PDF of the application. But one of the reasons we're running these webinars this week is that we want to help you get ready as much as possible ahead of time. So this is a list of documents that, as far as we know, will be necessary for this application. It may change slightly, but this is the basic list. So you should have your license or registration certificate. If you are going to claim Excels, that you have participated in Excels, you need a copy of the Maryland Excels certificate. And we've provided the website, the link for obtaining that. The articles of incorporation or articles of organization, so that depends on your business structure. A certificate of good standing from the Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation. So again, this applies to those that are businesses, corporations, nonprofit organizations. If you are a sole proprietor, you will not need a certificate of good standing. You will need documentation of pre-COVID-19 revenue and income. And again, depending on your business organization, on your organizational structure, that might be a 990, it might be a Schedule C, it might be a profit and loss statement. We'll come back to that a little bit later. And then you need to be registered in the Montgomery County Central Vendor Registration System, and that is a relatively simple process. You can find it at the link below, and it's just a requirement because they want to, that's their system. That's how they relate to vendors. Okay, so the next, for the next several minutes, we're going to look at what we know about the application now. We are hoping that we will be able to actually share the application as of Monday, but again, it's not up yet. So it begins pretty simply, as many applications do, with just basic information about the applicant and where they can be contacted. I guess the only thing to highlight here is that if you are a for-profit business, you're going to list the owner, and if you're a nonprofit, you'll probably go with the executive director. So there will be some specific questions about eligibility. You know, is the child care program located in Montgomery County? Is your program currently in compliance with the Maryland State Department of Education Office of Child Care? As we mentioned, do you have at least 60% Montgomery County residents? And is the business or owner delinquent in any city, state, or federal taxes, child support payments, or other penalties? That connects to being in good standing, the certificate that we mentioned earlier. Okay, and again, this is a fairly standard set of information that they're asking. Provide your federal tax ID number. If you are applying for multiple locations, how many child care locations do you have in Montgomery County? So for example, if you're a regional child care provider, how many of them are Montgomery County based? What's the type of your business, and when was your program established? So here's where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. They're going to ask a number of questions about capacity, and this is one of the ways they're going to figure out what your losses were. So they want to know what the maximum license capacity for each location is. So if you will apply by site, so you would say, you know, I'm allowed 50 children total in my site. And they want to know, this is, as I understand it, they're looking for actuals with this next site, this next set of numbers. So the first maximum license capacity, that's what you can do, you know, according to your license. But each of these numbers associated with different age periods, those are what you actually did. So let's just say, perhaps looking at February 2020, before the pandemic hit, how many children did you have who are under 24 months? How many children did you have who were 2 to 4 years old? And how many children did you have who were 5 years old? Again, this program is focused on birth to 5, so those are the numbers they're counting. Then they want you to look forward, and they want you to think about, if you're not open and if you are open, what capacity do you have under the COVID-19 guidance? So that requires looking at the Maryland State Department of Education guidelines. And again, this will be a projection of, well, how many children can you have in your space who are under 24 months? How many from 2 to 4 years, and how many who are 5 years old? They are also going to ask you about the number of employees. Again, this is a way of looking at your costs pre and post-COVID. So number of employees as of the beginning of February, and then the number of current employees. And is your program located in a public school? So this is the question we talked about earlier that relates to, if you are in a public school, a Montgomery County public school, then you will be exempted from that August 31st start deadline. Then there's a section on other funding. They ask if you've applied to any federal, state, or local funding assistance, and there is a long list of things that they will consider here. So I want to really stress that if you have applied to these programs, if you have received money from these programs, you can still apply for this grant. There are a couple of things to know in addition to that. One is that you can't use two pots of money to pay the same costs. So let's just say you got a Maryland Small Business COVID-19 business relief grant, and you used it to pay for payroll in May. Then you can't ask for this funding to pay for payroll in May. But otherwise, you can ask for funds from this grant program. And I think that they're going to do something where they'll weigh funds that you may have received against what they will award to you. But again, I think they're still working out some of the details on that. So here's the next set of questions following on. Did you apply? Did you receive funds? What were the funds used for? And so this is where they would be checking if you got, again, that Maryland State business loan, or grant rather, and you used it for payroll. Well, then they're not going to want to provide funding that you're going to direct to payroll under this grant program. Okay, population served. So this is looking at who you are providing services to. And again, this is so that they can determine whether you're meeting some of their priorities. So the first question has to do with families that are receiving some kind of tuition assistance, families with children with special needs, and families, a program that is participating in the Maryland Excels program. There are two questions which are long form. These are the only two questions at this point in which you will actually provide, kind of detailed information. You only have 150 words for each of these questions. So the county is encouraging you to do a bulleted list. The first one is to explain additional expenses that the program has incurred. So that would be costs associated with the additional precautions you have to take, things like personal protective equipment, cleaning supplies, training of personnel on the procedures they need to use, and other related things. And the second one is to describe how the public health emergency has caused financial loss to you. And that includes loss of enrollment, parents unable to pay tuition, your inability to cover operational costs. So these address the two buckets of funding that we talked about at the beginning. And the county has indicated that it does want to pay for, in addition to ongoing operational expenses, it does want to pay for additional expenses that the program has to take on. So for example, if you had to buy additional tables because you need to spread the children in your care further apart than before, that is something you could put in that first description. It's not clear. They've said that they would spend up to $10,000 on this set of costs, but it's not clear whether that will be part of the overall award or whether that would be on top of the award that they will make to you. So my advice is just to include this information and to put that also into your financials. Okay. So what kind of financial documents does the county want? They are going to ask you for information about your actual February 2020 income, your actual February 2020 operating expenses. Sorry, I seem to have dropped a zero off there. The projected income for 1 month, for a month after July 2020, and the projected operating expenses for 1 month after July 2020. So basically they want a picture of what was your operation intake and outflow in February 2020, and what do you project for either if you're open now or if you aren't open now for your reopening after the month of July. Again, so just a note that the funds will be based on the calculations coming out of this, and we'll look at some detailed information in just a moment, but a reminder that you may not get the total amount of your grant request. There are a lot of organizations and there's a limited pot of money, unfortunately. So they did provide a draft, the county did provide a draft template. And this is the kind of information that they are going to want. We don't know that this is final, but it's probably what it will look like. So there'll be a category for parent fees. I've just filled in some numbers so you can see how it'll look. A category for state subsidies, whoops. A category for county working parents assistance, and then a category for other things that you might have, other state bonuses, child care and adult food program funding, and so on. The county did say that they would not be including EPIC funding in this other bucket that they will be looking at. I do want to confirm that and make sure that that ends up in the final version, but for now, they're not including it. So this would be a way for you to look at the total income that you had either in the February 2020 bracket or that you are projecting forward. And this is the expense side of that financial information. So they will ask you what costs you had associated with payroll. And you can see there are a number of things they're willing to include in that category. What costs you had associated with facilities. So that's a pretty broad range of things. It includes telephone, rent, if you have contracted services for, say, maintenance, utilities, and so on. Professional fees, I suppose that would be if you had, some kind of regular outside consultant come in to do programming. Program expenses, this is a very broad category, and so it's all kinds of supplies. It's whether you have food service, it's support for field trips, staff development, and so on. And then administrative costs, which can be things like software, insurance, bank charges, and other things of that nature. So these are the categories that they will be asking you to fill in. And you can see that basically each category will be a total of a subset of expenses. So most of you will probably do a budget. I've only given you a section because I wanted you to be able to see the detail. But for example, if you were looking at program expenses, you would probably want to have a category called program expenses and then list out the detailed items underneath. So you know, for example, what you've spent on office supplies, what you've spent on classroom supplies, and so on. Then you'll have a total figure, total program expenses, and that will go in this in this category. So this is what the county will ask you for in the application, and this is backup so that you can document where your expenses are coming from. So for businesses, they will ask for demographic information, some pretty standard questions. And then for everyone, you sign and you submit the application. One very, very important thing to note is that you have to do the application in one sitting. It's unfortunate, but the county, for technical reasons, can't make it possible for you to start the application, save it, and come back to it. This is one of the reasons why we're doing all of this work ahead of the application opening so that you can begin to really collect all the information you need. And when you sit down, you can do the whole thing. You will need to provide, when you sign and submit, you'll need to provide the child care owner or executive director's name and the legal business name. And once you sign and submit and congratulate yourself for having finished the work, there is a second step. The county will send you an email with a screenshot of your submission, an ID number, and a link to upload documents. So these will be documents like the ones we looked at earlier on, and they will give you a list of the documents to upload, and then you have until July 17th to upload the documents, but don't wait. The county has said that they are going to look at those priorities and they will use those in weighing the awards. But there is only so much money, and so it is better to come in early to request the money than to wait until the very last minute. The county's also told us that there will be reporting requirements, but we don't know what the details are for the reporting requirements. They should be included in the application, so you'll know what data you have to collect. Okay, We're almost done. I know this is a lot of information to absorb, and we will take questions. As mentioned, the application is expected to open on June 29th, Monday, and to be open through July 17th. As I noted, you have to fill it out in one sitting. The county is developing a set of resources that will sit on the county's COVID-19 page, and that will have a copy of the application. It will have information in different languages and probably a list of FAQs as we go through this process. As I've repeated many times, but very important to keep track of, it's only for programs that serve birth to age 5. And Nonprofit Montgomery and Women's Business Center, we're here to offer you technical assistance. So as I mentioned, Nonprofit Montgomery is focusing on childcare centers. We have been running webinars this week. We will be running a number next week. We will also be starting individual consultations and office hours. So that means if you have the need to talk something through with somebody, you can do that. And we expect to have capacity in English, Spanish, French, and Amharic. And we will indicate that so that you can sign up for a session in one of those languages. You can find out about that at our website or by emailing the address provided there. And the Women's Business Center has also been running a number of webinars. They've already started running webinars in different languages this week, and they will continue next week. This is their website and their email for contacting them to set up a time to talk, and they are focused on family child care. And as I mentioned, both organizations are happy to have any kind of child care program on the webinars. It's just that if you have more detailed questions, you might find better assistance in, the appropriate organization. So, as I said, a lot of information, and now we'll take questions.
Franca, if you want to not screen share, then people might be able to see you better, and I will ask you some of the many questions that have come in. Okay. First one is, do you need a certificate of good standing whether you are a nonprofit or a for-profit?
Yes.
Okay. How about adding a new room or applying for extra adults? This provider says they currently have a wait list for infants but need to get the approval to hire more people. Will this person be approved? Can they apply for a new room? And how long will it get to get the funds?
So the county's intention here is to help you reopen and to meet the guidelines for COVID-19. If you're expanding or hiring additional staff because you have to meet those guidelines, those are costs they will consider. If you're expanding because you have additional demand, unfortunately, those are not costs they'll consider.
How about this one? This person, you touched on this, but they operate on a school year schedule. They're not open in the summer. Children will not return until September 8th, but staff will be on site and working before the August 31st deadline.
So my understanding here is that the council really wants children to be in the daycare as of August 31st, unless you are in a Montgomery County public school facility. Having staff will not be sufficient. This is one of the things that we'll try to clarify with them because there have been a number of questions around this, but that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And this same provider asked, on slide 15, it said, describe expenses that the facility has incurred. The verb there is past tense. So does that mean the expenses have to have been incurred in the past, or can it be allocated to help pay for PPE, cleaning supplies, etc., being ordered right now?
That's a very good question. My understanding is it can be applied to ongoing costs or costs you anticipate.
Okay. Someone is asking, do you need to meet all the priorities or just some of them to get preference in the review process?
You meet any priorities you can, and the preferences will be assigned, accordingly.
Somebody else received an email dated June 17th that stated that the zip codes, the ones you listed, are qualified only. This person has a child care center outside of the priority zip codes and is wondering if they can still apply if they meet the rest of the criteria.
Yes, I haven't seen anything saying that you had to meet those zip codes, but no, you do not have to meet those zip codes. They will give you priority if you can, if you are serving children in those areas.
For facilities, if we are a family childcare program, are we allowed to include a percentage of our mortgage as rent?
I believe mortgage is one of the costs that you can include, and yes, it would be a percentage. So my answer is yes.
A couple budgeting questions. Is the budget pre-COVID for the month of February, or is this going forward once the program opens?
So you will need to do both. You will need to do a budget based on pre-COVID. You could use the month of February. I think that's what they're going to use as the standard. And then you will use a post-COVID budget. And it is supposed to be, again, they're still finalizing some of this, but my understanding is supposed to be for a month after July of this year, because that's the new fiscal year. If you've been open all this time, that doesn't prevent you from applying, but the budget they want is after the beginning of July.
Is the budget a template that the providers fill in on the application, or should they prepare one to upload later?
My understanding is it will be a template. I would do a budget. That's one of the reasons I showed that chunk of the larger budget, just because that will help you if you ever need to document to the county what those expenses were. But you will be filling in a template.
And similarly, providers are asking if they could have access to the budget templates prior to the application going live.
I wish I could say yes, but I don't think that's going to be possible. And it's Friday and they're supposed to go live on Monday, so you don't have long to wait.
Question, do we have a link to the application yet?
No, we don't. Sorry about that.
I'm a family childcare provider, EPCC provider. Can this person apply?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have to be located in Montgomery County to apply?
Yes, unfortunately you do. Even if you serve, my understanding is I would go to the county and ask them on this, but what I have been told is that you have to be in the county even if you served children. You're outside the county and you serve children from inside the county, that's not sufficient.
Do you need a DUN number to apply?
You need a federal ID number. I think that's all that's required. So it wouldn't be a DUN number. It would be your EIN or something like that.
Okay. Important clarifying question. You say childcare must be open by August 31st, but does this mean we cannot open before August 31st?
No, you absolutely can.
And yeah, that's very important. I hope everyone heard that. The distributions of funds, are they ongoing or are they all considered at the same time after July 17th?
So I'll answer sort of that question in two ways because I'm not exactly sure which one you're asking. The awards will be made as quickly as possible. They're going to assemble a team of 25 people to do the reviews, and they hope to get the money out in August. So they're trying to move this very quickly for the county. And from my understanding, it will be a lump sum payment. So you will get all of it at once.
This provider inquired to a next door location to have more space for social distances. Could this provider use the cost of construction to as part of this program?
So that sounds like it is costs related to COVID-19. I think you could put it in there. I would be surprised if the county would pay for all of it, but they would certainly consider it.
What about a provider who did not close at all, continued with some of the EPCC kids and got paid by the state of Maryland? Is this provider eligible?
Yes, this provider is eligible. This provider is eligible.
Okay. And do you need articles of incorporation if you're a family daycare provider, sole proprietor, not an LLC?
No, I don't think so.
Is this one-time funding, or have you heard if the county is going to offer any additional funding in the future?
We have not heard about additional funding, so I would consider this one-time funding. I do want to say something to everyone that if for some reason you don't get this funding, you're not eligible. The county is also considering another pot of money that would provide up to $5,000 for a business or an organization to help with reopening costs. They will be, I believe they're going to be holding a hearing on that on July 7th. And our experience has been that they hold the hearing and then they move it pretty quickly after that. So if for some reason you're not eligible for this fund, please take a look at that and consider whether you could fit into that category.
Okay, can a Catholic preschool that is a licensed childcare center apply?
Yes.
This provider says right now they don't have any childcare in their center. Can they still apply because parents are afraid to bring their children there until the second phase?
Yes, so part of what you're doing is you're going to be projecting forward. If you remember that slide on capacity, you're going to be figuring out, and you can do this based on talking to your parents. You can do it based on the standards, that apply to your space. Or you can do it based on, what you've experienced in the past, but you're going to project forward how many children you're going to have. And that will be part of your response to the application. So all that is to say that if you have no children now, but you think you're going to have 10 children as of August 31st, put that figure in.
Okay, some questions that I see in the chat box are, this provider operates for two-year-olds through 5th grade. For the financial information, should they carve out preschool revenue and expenses for the projections? I think that's a question about aging, how they should.
Right, and so that is a very good question. We were on a phone call with the county and they said that you should use the whole of your expenses because they would be able to pull out the costs related to school-age children. They're going to use a certain standard for cost per child. I would watch and see what they actually put on the website because I think they're still not entirely clear about how they're going to handle that. But the bottom line is you should apply. And we should get more clarity on how you do the financials in the next few days.
And can you clarify your points about why ethnicity matters? This person was curious why that.
Oh, the county just collects that data, I think partly because they have some goals around contracting with minority and women-owned businesses. And so they're looking for that information.
Do you know how long the application will be live on the site?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks
Okay.
is my understanding. June 29th through July 17th.
Okay, and July 17th is also the date that there will be the deadline for supplemental documentation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, earlier is better.
Do we include MSDE for our EPCC on our budget?
So again, what I heard from the county yesterday is that EPCC funds do not need to be added into the income side of your financial reporting. I would confirm that with the county. So look at the information that comes out on Monday because I would just want to double check that.
Okay, and do you remember, or can we go back to somebody's asking for the first bullet on priorities? Do you remember what that one was?
So I think the priorities are, subsidies from federal, state, or local, children with special needs, and then it's the zip codes, and then it's Maryland excels. So okay. I hope I hit all of them. And again, a reminder that the PowerPoint will be up on Nonprofit Montgomery's website, so you can check that. You don't have to sit through the webinar all over again.
If you're getting unemployment right now for small businesses, is it okay to apply for this grant?
Yes, it is.
Okay. If this provider is a family child care provider and as a result of COVID-19, we had to defer mortgage payments, are we able to put that as a lump sum amount that will be due on August 1st or only a percentage of that amount?
That is a very good question. My guess would be a percentage, but here's where you might want to talk to the Women's Business Center because they have a lot of expertise in working with family child care programs, and they might be able to help you with the details of that.
What about this provider has applied for 2 grants, didn't receive any confirmation? How should they report? First of all, can they still apply? And how should they report their grant status?
So first of all, yes, they should apply. And secondly, they should report that they've applied for whatever grants they've applied for and indicate that they haven't received any funding. And then What might happen on the back end is if they do get the other grants, and I hope they do, then they would just have to make sure that they're not using the same money, money to pay for the same costs, two pots of money to pay for the exact same cost for the exact same time period.
This provider just started a daycare on February 24th, lost a few children who had wanted to join, and then picked up enrollment from 2 children who were essential workers. Can this person apply?
Yes.
Okay. If you are an EPCC provider and you receive bonuses from MSDE, do you include this in your budget spreadsheet?
That's a very good question. Again, so my understanding is EPPC funds are not to be included in your statement of other income that you've received, but I would want to double check that with the county. I've only gotten it verbally.
Do you know, is there any time limit to use these funds?
That's a good question. I'm not aware of one, but we will double check that.
Could you explain how to get the Maryland Excel certificate?
So you should know if you've been involved in the program, and if you've been involved in Maryland Excels, you will have an account at that website that we gave you the link for, and you go there and you will be able to download a certificate. If you don't know if you've been involved with the program, you probably haven't been.
Okay. Going to some of the questions that were asked beforehand. Let's see. Will providers need to present receipts for all of the PPE and other items purchased?
The county hasn't said that they're going to require receipts. I think it's always a good idea to keep them so that you have the documentation if you need it. But as far as we know, they're not asking for that.
Okay. Let's see, I think those have been answered. All right. If there are other questions, oh, yes. I think a number of people are asking to have this information available later, and Mindy has been putting in the chat box where the PowerPoint can be found later, and also a recording of this. So if there's something else there. Somebody said they are not in Maryland Excels. They were going to apply for it. Can they go ahead and still apply for the grant without being part of that program?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. If you have children who are coming from different zip codes, but some are in the targeted areas, will you be considered a preference?
Yes. I think you would indicate how many children you had from those zip codes, and it'll be weighted accordingly.
Somebody says, if I'm still in unemployment, can I get it in my budget? I'm not sure if that I might need some clarification.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so we'll wait. If that person wants to give a little bit more information. Another family child care provider said some of the children are in Howard County. Is that okay? Can they still apply? And they are an EPCC provider.
As long as 60% of the children or more are from live in Montgomery County, you can apply. And you're located in Montgomery County.
Another location question. The zip codes count for where the children live and not where your center is located, or both?
That's a very good question. My understanding is it's where the children are located, where the children are coming from. But that would be something to look on the county's website for an FAQ on that.
So now gotten this next question in lots of different ways, so maybe we just need to state it really clearly. This person is saying they're not enrolled in Excels. Do they have to be an Excel provider to apply?
No. So I want to be really clear. Those priorities, those are things that basically give you like extra points. So they're nice to have, but they are not requirements. The requirements are the things that are listed under eligibility requirement. You may have seen that I put an Excel certificate under documents required, and that's just because if you are claiming to be part of Excels, you need to have a certificate. But again, Excels is not a requirement. Being in one of those zip codes that are targeted is not a requirement. Serving children with special needs is not a requirement. And serving children who have federal, state, or local subsidies is not a requirement.
If a provider gets this grant, do they list it as profit or income?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it's probably, well, I mean, it depends partly on your business structure, so I'm not even going to try that one. I would suggest talk to an accountant.
All right. I'm going to leave it open for a minute to see if other questions come in. But if you had a question that you don't feel was answered, please put it in the Q&A box again, even if you feel you've already asked it, because I have now gone through everything that I see in the chat and the Q&A box. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, but we can give it another minute. Somebody has their hand raised. Let's see. Oh, first, so centers with children's 2 through 5 can apply.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll just remind everybody while we're waiting to see if there are any final questions that you can go to our website listed on the PowerPoint or send an email also listed on the PowerPoint to ask for additional assistance, one-on-one consultations, and we will have different language capability. At this point, we're anticipating, in addition to English, Spanish, French, and Amharic. And we will be doing additional webinars all next week. And again, hope to have some of those in some of the other languages that I just listed. So check the website and keep track of, the county's COVID-19 website as well, because they should be posting all of their resources on that website.
Franca, somebody asked if their payment for an accountant would be considered an expense.
I think you could probably put that in administrative fees, because that's a necessity of your program.
Okay, this is very technical. Line 31 on the IRS form, is that going to make a difference?
Oh my goodness, I have no idea what line 31 is, I'm sorry. So either please explain to us what that is or talk to an accountant who will have that memorized.
Yeah. Okay, what is the minimum and maximum amount of the grant to be approved if qualified?
So again, I would go back to that sheet. If you're a family child care center, a family child care program, the maximum is $25,000. If you're a center for one site, the maximum is $75,000. It goes up to $250,000 if you have 4 or more sites. And as I mentioned, there's this piece which is attached to the getting ready for the precautions connected to COVID-19, to accommodating the guidance for COVID-19. That's up to $10,000. We don't know if that would be in addition, or if that would be, for example, part of that $25,000 that would go to a family child care program.
This provider does not have a tax ID since the Family Day Care Center just started in February. Can this provider apply?
That's a question probably for your accountant, but I think what you, the truth is I don't know the answer to that, because they do also want to see your prior records. You might be able to just apply for the funding that is meant to support operations in the future. I would talk to, it's a family child care provider?
Yes.
I would talk to the Women's Business Center about that, but my guess is that you could apply for the funding for reopening.
Another question, so this one's gotten asked a couple times, so maybe we need to be real clear about it. This person said, if my program only serves 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, but not serves 2-year-olds, are we eligible?
Yes. So here's the answer. The broad answer is that you must serve children within the age range of 0 to 5, birth to 5 years old. If you serve 2 and 3-year-olds, that's okay. If you serve from birth to 5, that's okay. If you serve from birth to 5 and school-age children, that's okay. But if you only serve school-age children, you're not eligible.
Somebody is asking if their case manager is able to assist or answer questions about this grant. And I don't see why not.
Sure. I would say if that person's knowledgeable, absolutely.
Okay. Does the provider need a portion of the daycare? Let me just see if I can understand this question. This sounds like, do I need a portion of the daycare to separate the kids? How is it practical to separate them? I don't know if they're asking about expenses related to that or not. Yeshi, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, if you want to just give us a little bit more information about what you're asking, that would be helpful. Okay, the next question is, I became a family childcare license provider 4 years ago, but registered my trade name last year. Do you think that's going to affect anything?
No, I think the only thing you need to be careful about is that all your documents are aligning, so that you're using your legal business name, that you're using the name that's on your taxes, and so on. So just be careful about that, but yes, you can apply.
Do you have any information on who will be providing training on cleaning procedures?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't. I would look at the Montgomery County Child Care Resource and Referral Center and see if they have those kinds of things. That would be a place to start.
Can programs that open in July use those losses for the application?
So the losses are going to be based on a comparison to what you had pre-COVID. So if you were operating prior to the emergency declaration and then you reopened, that's fine. If you weren't open, I don't think that it makes sense for you to compare, to ask for losses when you weren't open, but you could confirm that with the county.
I'm not seeing anything, so maybe we just give 30 seconds to see if anything else pops up, but otherwise I think we have answered the questions that are, okay. All right, so the question that Yeshi was asking about a portion of the daycare, that's related to, so the information that Franca is giving right now really has to do with the application. I think the question is more about how to physically follow the guidelines for social distancing, and that I think is beyond this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're not childcare experts, nor are we COVID-19 experts. So I think I would go to DHHS or to MSDE, Department of Education, and see what you can figure out from those places.
And we will also pass on that information that providers need this. We both see that there's questions about social distancing guidelines and also about the cleaning protocols. So we will pass on this information that providers need it from the county. So thank you for sharing that. Okay.
We have just a few minutes left if anybody has any other questions. Anything coming through in the?
No, we're getting some nice thank yous, and then once approved, how do you get the grant? And that might be, you might want to talk about the vendor.
Yeah, so first of all, you need to be in the Montgomery County vendor system. And secondly, they're going to ask you for your ACH information, which is basically the information for making a deposit directly into your bank account. So they won't be sending you a check. They do want to deposit the money directly. So if you don't have that system set up, you might want to figure out how to do that by talking to your bank.
Another question. So for EPCC provider, who do we contact to see if we need contact with the county to repost bonuses or income from MSDE?
Repost.
Hold on. Umera, if I'm saying your name correctly, you might want to give us a little bit more information so we can try to answer that question. But here's another question. Are you aware of whom we should contact for non-payment for essential? It got cut off, but I think probably this person was providing. I think this is an issue of MSDE. I think if I'm correct, that this is an issue of MSDE not providing payment for people who were caring for essential workers' children.
And so you'd have to go back to MSD. I'm sorry, that's not something that we're able to help you with.
Okay, business bank statement shows every expense and earning. Will that be good enough?
It depends on your organizational structure, I think. So if you're a very small business, that might be sufficient. Yeah, it depends on what you do come tax time.
Do we have to show unemployment payment on this application?
Whatever's in that list of funds that that I showed earlier, that the county wants to know about. I don't believe that unemployment's on there. There were some things about IRS, ways that you could postpone payments, but I don't think unemployment was on there. But you should check that list.
Okay. And then Mindy, maybe you could put this back in the chat. Somebody is asking where they can find the application on Monday. Okay, Umera is clarifying, who do we contact in the county to see if we should include bonuses or payments from MSDE for essential personnel children under income?
So there will be, the website will have information and it will have a contact point for questions like this. So I would watch the COVID-19, the Montgomery County COVID-19 website, and I think Mindy's going to put that link in the chat.
And this might be a good time to remind everybody that both Nonprofit Montgomery and Maryland Women's Business Center will be holding appointments for technical assistance to answer more technical questions about the application.
And just also to say, sorry, Meredith, to interrupt, but just also to say that it is a changing picture, as you can hear. And so we're, giving you the best information we have now, but we would expect that we'll have better information as of Monday when we can see the application.
A couple people have asked if we're going to email the application. We are not able to do that. It's an application that will be on the site that Mindy has posted in the chat box, and it has to be filled out online.
I do think that the county is going to post a PDF version of the application on the website, so you'll be able to download that and look at that.
Somebody is asking if they did not pay taxes they owed, would they still be eligible to apply?
So that might affect your good standing with the state of Maryland, so I would check that out as soon as you can. With the Department of Taxation and Assessment at that link that we included in the PowerPoint.
If a provider opens July 6th, can we compare income for July with the February income?
Yeah, my understanding is that you can compare any month after the beginning of July. It probably would be better to do a month in which you have a whole month of expenses, but if that's what seems best to you, you could use July.
Somebody is asking about all the links in the chat emailed, and I believe, although Mindy and Franco, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that all the links that Mindy's been putting will be included in the PowerPoint that we're posting. Is that?
We have almost all of them. I will go back and add just a few more. For example, I think we didn't have the web page for the county, and we can add that.
Okay, thank you. And I think we are done. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, there'll be additional assistance, so please check the website and come back with any questions you have. Bye-bye.